In Solo Leveling, after Drippy Woo destroyed the architect of the system, the architect gave him a prophecy saying that when the pillars of fire that hold the heavens are raised, there will be an inevitable death approaching his way. Drippy Woo looks back saying that he doesn't give a flying fuck. Outside the gate, weak hunters discuss about what was happening inside the gate since it had been an hour since the Hunters Guild went in, saying that if they themselves went in, they would have surely been screwed. Someone announces that the hunters were finally coming out of the gate, but were completely beaten and battered since it could be seen that they had multiple injuries. The fodder hunters were in utter shock, since the elites of the Hunters Guild came out looking like that after raiding a gate that was just supposed to be C rank. Jin-Chul walks up to the hunters, asking if they could help carry the deceased, which shocked them even more since people actually died inside the gate. A few minutes later, Drippy Woo came walking outside the gate nonchalantly, thinking that since the architect was gone now, it's a shame that he didn't get an answer to all his questions. Jin-Chul tells Drippy Woo that 20 of the top-rank elite hunters had died inside. If this had been a dungeon break, the extent of the damage would have been unimaginable, and is astonished that he tried to stop all of that alone. Drippy Woo looks down at the row of corpses, saying that he only survived because of the aid of the Hunters Guild and the monitoring division. Jin-Chul said he knew he had entered the dungeon, but since the mana leaking out of it was so potent, he requested help from the Hunters Guild, but it still resulted in such a tragedy. Jin-Chul asks him how he found that the double dungeon was in this particular gate, and he responded saying that it had summoned him here. Jin-Chul doesn't seem to understand, so Rizzy Woo tells him that he had received a message telling him to come here. Jin-Chul asks if they could see that message, but Drip Woo tells him it's a message that's only visible inside his head. Although Jin-Chul is still confused, he doesn't think he'd be joking at a time like this where there are casualties. Mommy Cha walks up to Rizzy Woo asking if he was all right. He responds saying he's fine, but maybe just a little tired, falling to the ground completely exhausted of his strength. At the same time in Japan, trucks carrying loads of mana crystals can be seen dumping them on the road. Yuri Orlov states that there were about 200,000 tons of them, saying that these would definitely be enough to fuel up the magic circle. Orlov explains how he would first cast a magic circle around the gate and fill up the necessary magic power, and from then on the magic circle would gather its own magic power, sustaining itself completely. Orlov says how there's something really strange going on. The man behind him asks him if there's something wrong, but Orlov responds saying that it's not what he's thinking since the magic circle is perfect, but there seems to be someone lingering around here. Orlov suddenly shouts into the air asking who they were and to show themselves. The man is confused since there wouldn't be anyone with the courage to stay in the streets when the gate's dungeon break happens tomorrow. Orlov grins, saying that he didn't say it was a person, which confused the man even more. Behind Orlov, at the top of a building's rooftop, a mysterious man could be seen saying he got good senses, but it's expected considering where his strength is coming from. The mysterious person turning out to be Drippy Woo's Big Daddy, as he says that it's finally beginning, saying that everything is flowing accordingly to the predetermined tragedy. The Japanese army and tanks could be seen stationed waiting on the dungeon break, making Kanai question as to why they were here. Since modern weapons have no effect against monsters, there was literally no point in the military being here. Reiji responds saying that if Yuri Orlov fails, they would need to stall some time for the first line of hunters to prepare an attack. Kanai responds saying that they were basically cannon fodders, but Reiji said that they weren't any different than them, as long as they're in the front line as well, but they just get to see just how powerless humans are in the face of a disaster. Orlov said that if everything goes well, he might just be able to take care of the S-rank gate alone. Orlov said that he would prefer being called the man who cleared an S-rank gate alone, but sadly, there's someone else that's more suitable for that title. Orlov pops open an alcohol bottle, but the association agent attempts to stop him. Orlov responded saying it was just a toast to calm his nerves, saying that he'd show him the best show he's ever seen. Orlov deep-throats the bottle, asking how many S-ranks were present today. The agent responds saying that there's 15 of them, which made Orlov a little disappointed since there were less people for his show. He asks what the United States was doing right now since they did not send any S-rankers to Japan as backup. The agent responds saying that an S-rank gate had appeared not only in the eastern side at the Maryland state, but also in England and India. Orloff looks up in disappointment, saying that the world is suffering from the lack of qualified people. Suddenly, the agent shouted that the gate was opening. Back in Korea, Drizzy Woo suddenly wakes up after fainting from exhaustion from the events that happened in the double dungeon. Jin-Ho walks in surprised. He had woken up asking why he woke up so late, telling him he thought he was dead. Drip Woo asks what had happened, so Jin-Ho told him he had slept for 3 whole days, which shocked Drizzy Woo. But because of the fatigue he had accumulated, and because he hadn't rested, it seemed reasonable. Drip Woo said he couldn't get the scene he had witnessed during the playback out of his head, but realizes that if he had slept for 3 entire days, he suddenly asks Jin-Ho about what had happened with the S-rank gate that had appeared in Japan. Jin-Ho looks down with a worried look in his face. In Japan, the hunters and military are in utter shock as huge beings stomp the ground. The hunters are shitting in their pants since giants are supposed to be top-tier A-rank gate bosses, but they are already coming out. Orloff confidently says that they are not much of a problem for him as he activates his ability, telling them to come. Mana starts exuding from the crystals that laid on the road, with all of it gathering in a single spot at the top of the gate, creating a barrier that covered it completely. A giant suddenly struck the barrier with all his might, making Orloff laugh since a monster that is found in a mere A-rank gate is attempting to break through his barrier. Behind the giant, an enormous hand slammed the giant's head into the ground, terrifying the absolute shit out of Orloff, since a giant that was at least 5 times the size of a regular giant stood right before him. As Orloff is pooping in his pants, the giant draws his sword, slashing the space in front of him, slicing through the barrier and multiple buildings like they were made of butter. In Korea, Jin-Ho explains how the raid in Japan had failed miserably. In another part of the city, Jin-Ho's dad wakes up with a headache, asking his subordinate how long he was asleep for. He responds saying that he had slept for 23 hours and 46 minutes. He said they were ready to take him to the hospital had he slept for 24 hours like he requested. The subordinate said how he has 2 things to tell him. He hands a file over to him containing the information of the first patient ever who had regained consciousness from the eternal slumber disease, which shocked Myung-han. The subordinate said how the patient turned out to be the S-rank Sung Drippy Woo's mother, leading to Myung-han thinking that maybe he had the ability to cure eternal slumber. He asks what the second thing he had to tell him was. He responds saying that the young lady, Jin-Ho's sister, had arrived. With a concerned look in her face, she asks her daddy about his current condition. Back in Japan, the giant drops Yuri Orloff as he screams like a little girl, waiting for someone to save him, falling headfirst into the giant's mouth as it eats him whole. Tanks and attack helicopters suddenly start firing towards the giants in an attempt to stop their rampage. Reiji shouts, saying that human weapons are completely useless against them, asking his subordinates what the hell they were waiting for, ordering them to go destroy them. Kanai and Minoru suddenly fly on top of one of the giants as they attempt to strike him down, thinking it won't be able to read their movements if they attack from a blind spot. Little did they know the giant knew exactly what these humans were planning. He used his sword to slash behind itself, almost cutting the hunters in 2 with insane speed and strength. Kanai is in utter shock, asking herself how something so large could move so fast, saying it's completely absurd. A helicopter flies above the battlefield, reporting the situation, saying it was a terrible scene that could even be seen from all the way up there, describing the situation as a complete hell. Drizzy Woo watches the situation unfold back in Korea as the reporter announces that the whole country was paying attention to the hunters' efforts in attempt to stop this disaster. Drip Woo is deep in thought, saying that if it keeps going at this rate, it will be Jeju Island all over again, endangering the entirety of Asia. Drip Woo looks at the hellish scene, thinking he should go. "Don't go," Gina said, knowing exactly what Drippy Woo was thinking. He responds, asking what she meant by that, so Gina said she knew he was about to leave. She looks down at the floor with a gloomy look. Jin-Woo looks back, assuring her he wasn't going anywhere because he's been working too much lately, so he's planning on resting for a while, patting her head, telling her not to worry. At the park, Drip-Woo sits in a bench just thinking about life. He calls for Baru, but he answers by calling him His Majesty, which led to Jin-Woo asking if he was watching dramas instead of guarding Gina, making him really nervous. He asks Baru on how Gina was doing. He responds telling him there was nothing odd with her behavior, meaning she was fine. Drip-Woo goes deep into thought, thinking that she must have developed trauma because of the events that happened at her school, since she's never stopped him from going except for his first raid 4 years ago. Drip-Woo walks down the road thinking on what to do until a black car approaches him.
You guys should consider subbing to my YouTube, where I'll be posting longer content at 1,000 followers.
Taking him into a building. Drip-Woo asks what business they had with him, referring to Jin-Ho's dad. He introduces himself as Yoo Myung-han, CEO of Yujin Construction. He slides a blank check over to Drip-Woo's side, saying he's not an arrogant person who believes money can buy everything, especially if the person he's talking to is an S-ranker, telling him to consider it as a token of his sincerity. Drip-Woo looks down at the check, thinking that whatever he's going to say must be confidential, meaning it's not something like a guild invitation. So he asks him what he wanted to buy from him specifically. Myung-han struggles to say the words, but said that he suffered from the same illness his mother had. Drip-Woo asks if Jin-Ho was aware of this, but he said excluding his physician, only 3 people including himself, his wife, and his secretary knew about it. Drip-Woo responded saying it was now 4, including himself, which the CEO confirmed. He said that while he was searching for a cure everywhere, he found that the only person that has ever recovered from that illness happened to be his mother, saying that he doesn't think that was a coincidence. He said that the only thing he wanted from him was the truth, and if he helped him, he would never forget his kindness. Jin-Woo stared deeply into space, thinking that today, a choice has to be made. In the skies above Japan, reporters recording the onslaught caused by the giants describe how gruesome it was, saying that they were destroying buildings and ripping out trees like they're trying to erase all traces of life from existence. On top of that, they were devouring people. One of the reporters states how they'd be safe up in the sky as long as they keep their distance, saying it was confirmed by multiple researchers. The reporters say how the largest one of the giants was guarding the gate, while the other ones scattered everywhere, stating that it was either waiting for someone or defending the gate, but it's not like he would know the reason. One of the reporters said that in his opinion, the largest giant didn't even feel like it was alive, saying that even though it's breathing and moving, it's like a machine moving according to its program. The other reporter responded saying that if it really was a machine, the cannons would have worked against it, and only 2 of the 30 giants that appeared had been terminated even after 2 entire days. They wonder if they could stop this disaster before the whole world gets destroyed. A loud shout could be heard from a building as Jin-Ho asks Drip-Woo if he was really saying he wanted to go to Japan, saying that it was different from Jeju since monsters of that size are absolutely abnormal. Drip-Woo responds saying that if he succeeded, the name of the Ajin Guild would be recognized by the whole world, but this still doesn't convince Jin-Ho. Drip-Woo realizes that if even Jin-Ho, who always trusted him, was against it, it signifies the magnitude of this as Jin-Ho interrupts his thought, saying that it would be okay, but he would be going as well, which confused Drip-Woo. But Jin-Ho explains how on the Red Gate incident, the Jeju Island raid, and the Double Dungeon incident that happened recently, saying that there were many similarities among them, and those were that he's not in any of it. He shouted, pointing at a news article saying that the only thing he could boast about is staying by his side, and that he was his only source of pride. Drip-Woo responds saying that that wasn't something you'd expect from a millionaire's son. Jin-Ho says how that is the reason why he must go wherever he goes, asking him to take him with him. Drip-Woo responds saying that he was against it just now, but Jin-Ho says he trusts him, so if it's safe for him, he would be safe as well. Drip-Woo looks down with a smile, saying he was just joking, because why would he go to Japan at a time like this, telling him he should go back home now, making Jin-Ho look back at him with a depressed look. As Drip-Woo walks down the road, he's thinking about how, even though he couldn't use his shadow soldiers, the architect was around the same level he was, meaning that there were many other beings that are stronger than him. It's a big world after all, and should not think the situation would be resolved, even if he goes there saying he's not a hero. Drip Woo arrives home as his mom asks him if he's going to eat dinner. As he's thinking that he has to make a choice, he asks his mom where Gina was, but she responded saying she said she wasn't hungry. The panel cuts over to where Drip Woo puts the check back on the table, saying that he was sorry, but there's nothing he could help him with. Jin-Ho's dad is confused, asking how his mother made a complete recovery after suffering from the eternal slumber disease. He responds saying that if he knew that he would have tried to earn money with the information and wouldn't keep it quiet, as he gets up telling him he had to go. On the elevator, Drip Woo reflects on his choice, saying that even though he's Jin-Ho's daddy, he doesn't know him personally or what kind of person he is, saying that he has a limited amount of holy water, so he has to use it wisely. Hit that follow thing.